Hello, this is QuickSkillz, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of the cheaper retro consoles found on AliExpress. This is the arcade box loaded with over 33,000 games. Now, you can get this device for just under $30, and it's going to take you about 1 to 2 weeks to arrive at your door. If you do like this review and you decide you want to purchase one, do yourself a favor and go to the description of this video and use my link to find it on AliExpress. There's a ton of vendors selling the arcade box, but if you want to ensure you're receiving the one that I am reviewing here today, be sure to use the link found in this video. Now, as we can see here, you have the option of going with the wired or wireless controllers. Given that the wired controllers are very short, I do recommend going with wireless. I did not see any input delay when testing this product, and the wireless option will give you a little bit more range when playing in front of a television. You can also see here that the price is for the 64 gig. If we go down further into the listing, you can see there's a 120 gig option and a 256 gig option. The one that I'll be reviewing here today is the arcade box, but it is the 256 gig option. And if you are planning on playing this device for a long time, go ahead and get a 250 gig device because it will come loaded with more ROMs. Let's get started with the review. When you first plug in your arcade box, don't just jump into a game. What you're going to want to do is go into the main menu and select controller settings. This is going to allow you to configure a controller. You're going to want to do this for each controller that you plan to use, and just like you see here in the tutorial, once you're done, you'll be able to jump right into a game. The other thing I want to mention is that the theme that you see here, the pictures that you see scrolling through all the consoles may look different on your console. That does not mean you got ripped off. All you need to do is go to UI settings and select the theme that you like best. So the one that I selected, you'll see it here in the video. Pick that one if you like the way it looks, but go through all the themes and find one that speaks to you. The other thing is that this is not meant to be an emuelic tutorial. If you do want some help configuring your device, go to my YouTube channel. I do have a video called Tips and Tricks for the Super Console. This device is actually running the same OS as the Super Console. It is emuelic, so those emuelic tricks that I give you in that video will also apply to the arcade box that's shown here. So let's go ahead and get started reviewing some games. To start off this review, we're going to jump right into a Game Boy game, and to start things off, let's play a Mario game. So I'm going to load up Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. This is a pretty easy game to emulate. I'm not surprised that it works perfectly. The other thing is that the sound of this game has been muted for copyright reasons. However, if you do buy this device, I do promise that the sound is going to come in crystal clear. The other thing is that the images that you see on the left and right of the screen, what makes it look like a Game Boy, is called a bevel. You will see those change from console to console. If you don't like those static images on the screen, all you need to do is turn off bevels and they'll be gone, and all you'll have is black on either side of the screen. I personally like the bevels, so I'm going to leave them on. And as you can see here, Mario is running around. We have only 2 buttons with the Game Boy, A and B, and the D-pad. So Mario is working perfectly. I'm not surprised. The Game Boy is a very easy device to emulate. So let's go ahead and jump into the Game Boy Advance. In the Game Boy Advance, we're going to play a game called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is actually a pretty neat game. I had a lot of fun playing it. There are a few more buttons with the Game Boy Advance, particularly the bumper buttons, and so I did test and make sure that everything was working properly. Again, the sound has been muted, but it is coming in crystal clear for me on my end, and I did not have any complaints with the Game Boy Advance games that I tested out, and the catalog is fairly complete. So I do have the 256 gigabyte SD card. However, it had hundreds of games. Now we're going to jump into the Game Boy Color, where we're going to test a Pokemon game. You got to test a Pokemon game if you're going to be playing one of these devices, and it did work perfectly. I did edit this video to cut out the loading screen because Pokemon has a very long introduction, so you're going to see me jump right into the game, but I did have to spend actual game time getting to this point. You can see here that the game is working perfectly. I do want to share a tip with you, and this applies to pretty much every game on here. There is a way to access RetroArch. RetroArch is a sub-menu within emuelic, and what that's going to do is give you some added features, and so this feature I'm going to teach you is going to be how to do quick saves. And so I have a save slot number 6, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it, and then as I play the game, if something happens that I didn't like, I can just load from that save slot. And this works for a lot of those games where you only get like 3 lives and the game takes you right back to the beginning. Just go ahead and do a quick save, and anytime you mess up, you can go right back into the save slot that you had. Now, next up is going to be the Sega Genesis. We have Sonic here. This is a really great game, and it moves very quickly, and you're going to see that it works perfectly. The Sega only has 3 buttons to use, A, B, and C, and they're all working perfectly. And I'm just going to let this Sonic game run for a second. What we're going to do next is we're going to test MAME. MAME is going to be those arcade games that you would play at a movie theater or a pizza place. MAME is going to have 1,000 or more games to play on here, but I will tell you that they are a little finicky. Games like X-Men, Simpsons, Ninja Turtles, they all work great. You're going to use select to put credits into the machine, and you're going to push start to start your gameplay. One other thing is I did come up across a bug, and what's happening is both controllers are activated by one controller. It's a very easy fix. I just took a shortcut and only mapping one controller, but when you put in both controllers, if you map them properly, you will not have this bug. But I only saw it on arcade games. I didn't really see it on any other console. And what I'm going to do now is, rather than going console to console, I'm just going to run a video in the background, and I sped it up so that the video is not an hour long. But what I'm doing is I'm going to just jump from console to console. I'm going to timestamp on the bottom of the screen what game is running and what emulator it is. So right now we have the Sega Master System. This is going to be stamped Sega Master System for the arcade box, and you can see it in action. So you can see here I'm playing Aladdin. But while we have this video playing in the background, I do want to reiterate that this is a great find for anybody wanting to get into retro gaming but doesn't have a lot of money to spend. For $30 to $40, even if you just get the 64 gig micro SD card, you're going to get a collection of games that is very easy to play and run at home. And if you get the wireless controllers, you can plug this right into your television and have wireless controllers at your couch playing games like Real Monsters for the Super Nintendo, X-Men, Simpsons, arcade games. I actually have a lot of fun when people come over to my house and say, hey, why don't we give this a go? And everybody sits around and we play a lot of these old school games. You are going to see me playing N64. I have Zelda Ocarina of Time loaded in here. I had been playing it before, and so it did remember my save that I did within the game. And this game is working very well. The graphics are a little pixelated, but it is true to form for the N64. I do want to say that not every N64 game in here is going to work perfectly. The N64 is one of the more difficult consoles to emulate. I don't know what it is about it, but some games work perfectly, like Ocarina of Time, and Super Mario just didn't work very well for me. Next up, we have Naomi. Naomi is a Sega Dreamcast type arcade cabinet, and what we're going to be testing on this is going to be Marvel vs. Capcom 2, just one of the games I wanted to test. There was not a lot of games included in Naomi, and honestly, the limitations of the arcade box are going to be very difficult to run some of these higher fidelity games. So keep in mind that your experience will vary. You do get Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on this device. You can see it is working very nicely. And so as you are playing with your arcade box, mess with the settings, find a way, find something that you think is working for you. But a lot of these consoles are going to work perfectly on this device. I have it here just so you can see it in action, but right now we're in the NES collection, and there's just hundreds upon hundreds of NES games, and they're all going to work. So one of my biggest complaints with the arcade box is I just don't have time to play everything that's on here. I have probably 3 or 4 retro consoles in my possession. I have over 12 terabytes of emulators and ROMs to play, and I just don't have the time to play everything. And so I tend to end up focusing on the classics like Mario Brother games, Sonic, some of the games from my childhood when I could be playing new stuff. It just takes so much longer for me to learn how to play and how to master it, so I end up just playing the same games over and over again. What's really cool is that you're going to find a lot of consoles on here that were exclusive to Japan. So we have the NeoGeo. You're going to see games on here that you probably didn't have access to when you were a kid, like Metal Slug, portable Metal Slug. Like, that was something that people did, and the only way we would play Metal Slug was at the arcade. But if you had a NeoGeo Pocket, you could play Metal Slug on the go. So that's what I have loaded up here right now. But I had a lot of fun with this device. Again, $30 to $40. Use the link on the description of this video. I had a lot of fun just going through the consoles, picking a game at random. Just don't spend a lot of time on one. If it doesn't work, go to the next one. I had very, very few issues playing with this arcade box, but granted, it is very limited in what it can play. So the range of games is a lot smaller than some of these other retro consoles that I've tested out. I do want to say that I could not get the PSP games on here to work. For whatever reason, I could not get any inputs to work, and you're going to see here I'm trying to work the back menu to see if I just need to reconnect the controller or something, but it was not an easy fix for me. I'm sure there is a way to get it to work, but I couldn't figure it out, and I don't spend more than 5 minutes trying to figure something out. There is way too many games on this device to really worry about it, and for PSP, there was only 5 or 6 games on here, so not really worth investing a lot of time onto it. What's really cool is that there is a ton of PlayStation games, and they work great. And the PlayStation, in comparison to the N64, which is about the same generation of game, you're going to have a lot of success emulating the PlayStation versus the N64. So if you just want to play some high quality retro games and you're looking at N64 and having a little bit of trouble, jump into the PlayStation. If it's the same game, just port it over one over the other, you will have a lot of fun with the PlayStation. And to me, it's very easy to emulate, not like the N64. But one last thing I do want to mention is that Emuelic is very finicky. Go to my video, tips and tricks. It's going to have a lot of little things. There's the thing called red screen of death. Sometimes you're going to load a game up and it's not going to load properly, and you're just going to get this red scary screen. All you need to do is hit start and select twice and it'll take you back to the menu. Not very difficult. The other thing is that every time you're done using this device, you're going to want to power it down. So you're going to hit select, you're going to go to exit console and it'll shut it down, or shut down console and it'll shut it down. There is a power button on the back of the device, but you don't want to push it until you've properly shut down the device. And the reason why I recommend that is because if you just power it down, there is a chance that your micro SD card doesn't like it and it'll get corrupted. So if you want to ensure that your micro SD card doesn't get corrupted as you're using this device, you're going to want to power it down within the sub menu of Emuelic, and then once you've successfully done that, push the little power button on the back. Then when you're ready to play it again, just push the power button once more and it will load up just like if you had plugged it in. And so that little tip and trick will help you preserve your micro SD card. But as you can see here, there are a ton of consoles on here. I actually filtered some out, so on your device you might see some like Magnavox or Atari. I honestly don't get a lot of satisfaction out of those games from the 70s, and the controllers and the schemes to play them are very difficult for me to figure out. So I don't bother with them. There's just not a lot of entertainment value for me. Sorry if that's why you would want to buy this console. But I did have a lot of success with NES, Super Nintendo, PlayStation, Genesis. All of those ran perfectly. The arcade feature of MAME is going to work very well for a majority of the games. The one thing I will say is that the high graphics games are going to be few and far between, and you're just not really going to see a lot of them in there. And so I'm scrolling through all the devices. There is a category for Dreamcast, but there was only one game included with it, and it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And to end the video, I do have the Game & Watch loaded up. I think it's kind of cool how they emulate it, because you can toggle between looking at a picture of the device or zooming in on the screen so that you're focused in just on the screen. The controls and the configuration of these games are very difficult, but I did have a lot of nostalgia playing these. So that's going to conclude my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If there is a particular console or game you want tested on the arcade box, let me know and I'll let you know how it runs. I might even do a video if it's quite important. So drop me a comment if you do buy this device and let me know what you think. Thank you.